All right, so let's just get back on the test. Can you say something real quick?
Testing 1 2 3.
All right, that's good enough for me. All right, and I do the zoom in once in a while just because, you're the subject, so it sometimes helps the viewer to see a different angle from
Me?
When our cameraman get lazy over there. Get on your jobs. All right, so we were just about to get into the ways in which you
Wanna be in the shot?
well, that was the funny part. Like when we sat over there, see, this is a
Yeah.
different angle for the show.
Okay.
That's the whole thing. And from the camera, it didn't look really tight, but it was super cozy. So, all right. The ways in which you do incorporate other music, or shall we say, not traditional jazz standards or composers into performance. Just go into that a little bit, and I'll ask questions, I guess, as they come up.
Well, some shows we've done as specifically other types of music. We've done some hip hop tributes like Common's, like Water for Chocolate.
And this is a live cover band version of the album.
Exactly, but the cool thing about that is we try not to do it as just a cover band. We'll add our own stuff into it. We don't play the songs exactly the same way with, we'll add horn solos or an arrangement or,
it's like an interpretation,
yeah,
but recognizable,
yeah,
enough to the extent that people feel like they're getting a part of what they expected.
Exactly.
Something like that.
And it's more of that style than it is jazz still. It's still
Sure.
going to be like Water for Chocolate show was probably still 85% hip hop, 15% jazz. Not that there really is a percentage, but
No, absolutely. And the most recent show that just occurred roughly 2 weeks ago is the Michael Jackson show. Can you tell me about where that idea come from, how to come about, how long you've been working on the concept, how you chose songs, just what went into that show? Because I was there, and anybody else that was there, I thought it was a humongous success. Not that the others weren't, because it sounds like, from what I've heard, I wasn't at them, they were amazing also. What were the behind the scenes like? It seemed like there was a lot of people involved in that.
A lot of people involved. A lot that can be said about the show. I came up with the idea about a year ago. I said, we have to do this because Michael was my first musical hero. Before I even played the trumpet or anything, it's just I remember listening to those Michael Jackson tapes.
Which tape was it, or what? Do you remember certain songs that were your first kind of introduction, or that you grabbed onto?
It was the History one that came out in the mid-90s.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All this.
Yeah. Well, then there's a lot on there.
Yeah.
So it was a best of, in addition with a second CD that had newer
had some
songs.
new songs, yeah.
Including, what was it, duet Slam or whatever it was, Jam with Janet, which was, just as a point of reference in time, that was a big video.
Right.
The song was what it was, but
yeah, it
was interesting.
So Michael was for me, and since getting into jazz and everything, I kind of almost forgot. I'd hear Michael every once in a while, but I never really sat down and was like, I'm gonna jam out to Michael for a while.
I want to get back to how the show was created in a minute, but with respect to that, you just talk about you as a jazz artist, whatever that means to you, or being perceived as being that, in the variety of ways you participate in jazz culture, whatever, versus making decisions to other things. Is that sometimes a hard decision to make? Is it hard? Do you try to find a balance between the two? How do you approach bridging that gap? Because it goes without saying that in jazz culture, it's largely based at this point upon tradition, I think, unfortunately. So sometimes that's looked down upon, but you always do it successfully and you're always so positive. And I'm not saying that people look negatively upon it, but people's relationship with jazz is sometimes a touchy one.
Yeah.
I perceive it to be.
I agree, there are these people out there that think like that, but I don't. I don't even think about whether... I don't try to find a fine balance between this and this and that. I just... it's very organic for me. I see it as all as music, at this point. As I grow older, I see more and more how labels can hurt music. I see how they can help it because people like to see labels, but as far as jazz is concerned and tradition, one of my favorite saxophone players, Logan Richardson, put it the best. He said the tradition has always been to move forward. For jazz, has always been to move forward, and people tend to forget that. They get caught up in the past. And I mean, if you go in my car right now, I'm listening to Art Tatum. So You know, it's not like I'm not like ignoring the tradition. I don't feel like I'm ignoring tradition at all. I love it. You know, Louis Armstrong it's one of the few songs I have on my phone. You know, like Louis Armstrong songs. Like it's.
Yeah. So it's just all an extension of your musical interests.
Yeah.
And rather than saying, "Oh, I do this" or "I do that," it's like, "This is what I'm going to do next."
Yeah. Exactly. And,
cool.
And that's how the Michael Jackson show came out. It wasn't like, oh man, I've been doing too many jazz gigs, so now it's time for this. But it was more like, I really just want to do Michael Jackson. You know, like it feels like we should do this. But that being said, like one of the reasons I had thought about that was because he's the king of pop, and he has probably the most popular artist of all time, literally. You know what I mean? Like, literally.
Well, you can go there with Michael.
Yeah. And with our goal to be reach so many people, I thought it would be good for us as a group to get into his music and learn from that, you know? And hopefully we'll be able to take that into our new original material, whatever we have learned from the experience.
Absolutely, well said. And so, is there actually a mantra or a phrase or a rule, roughly, that you all would be able to kind of like, as part of that, be able to like recite, or is it just purely the concept of sharing jazz with as many people as possible? Like, how do you view that? Because maybe there's a lot of different ways to look at that, and I'd be curious.
It's more or less the concept, you know?
Of just sharing jazz with as many people as possible, or how do you view it? Getting people to be open to the music, because I feel like a lot of people associate it, and like back to labels, they associate it with a certain thing, even if they've never seen it before. Will associate jazz with a certain thing, positive or negative, you know, and we want people to realize that, you know, we want it to be positive. We want their experience to be very positive, and that's one thing we try to do is bring a joy to the music as well, you know. And I've heard people, especially when we were doing a lot more original stuff. We've kind of been doing other projects right now, but when we were doing a lot of our quintet stuff, we had a lot of people come up to us and say, "I'd never listened to jazz before, but I like what you guys are doing." And that's exactly what we want, and we're hoping they'll go to the record store and buy a Coltrane CD or something, whatever it takes, and they'll go support some other jazz artists here. Or this was not just in Kansas City, but you know, wherever we play. So that would, you know, like that tells us that we're at least on the path to reaching our goal. Absolutely,
it's a continuous. We'll never finally reach it, but it's one that will continuous thing.
And so diverse is as the heart of, perhaps, based upon the way I've heard you speak about it, maybe the heart of the many efforts you're putting out there. Do you view diverse as more of a home for your music than yourself as a singular entity?
At this point, yes.
And so it sounds like what diverse has been traveling. We've talked a little about that. For those who aren't aware, we're currently in Kansas City, Missouri, where I've experienced a lot of his playing and his events, if you will, the ways in which he wants to bring music that he's involved with to the public. And that's, you know, awesome and welcomed, and I think it's having a great effect on everybody around here, so thank you for doing that.
Oh, sure.
Beyond that, you have traveled in various combinations, representing diverse, I guess, in some ways. Can you talk a little about that, just for people who might not be aware of what you've done outside of Kansas City before your arrival here, after, what that's all been?
Sure. I have been fortunate to travel a bunch in the past couple of years, especially with diverse a lot. We've done some travel in like the Upper Midwest. We've gone to St. Louis a few times, California, and a lot of this was about when our first CD came out. Boise, Idaho, a couple times.
What was the name of the first CD?
It's self-titled Diverse.
Diverse, okay.
Yeah, on Origin Records. And also, we've been to Europe a couple of times. Mainly France, Paris. And we've been getting a lot of the same reaction to our music, which has been a positive thing, you know. But it's funny, the more I travel also, I've been getting a lot of Kansas City pride, you know, because I come back and I get this perspective, and I realized more and more how many great things there are here. And so, but also when we travel, when we say, hey, we're from Kansas City, people are like, whoa, not New York? Or, you know what I mean? Or, mainly New York. So, I think it's great I feel like sometimes we're representing Kansas City in ways because it's not getting represented. And I was thinking the other day, I know there's individual artists in Kansas City who, in the jazz, who may travel, but I am not aware of any other groups in Kansas City that are traveling.
Sure.
So in that sense, I really do feel like sometimes we do represent Kansas City.
Yeah.
Especially, for instance, in 2008 when we did the Gene Harris Jazz Competition.
Which was where?
Which is in Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
And that was what led to our record project with Origin Records.
Cool.
And there's bands, like one band from LA, one band from New York, one band from Seattle, somewhere in Iowa, Boise. There's bands from different places.
Yeah.
And it was kind of almost like those bands represented those cities. They don't obviously specifically represent those cities because they're not the only bands in those cities, just like we're not the only band in Kansas City. But for the purposes of that competition, it seemed like, you associated with each band with that city. And so I felt like we represented Kansas City well. We ended up winning the competition. That's how we got the deal.
And so that was part of the prize.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We opened up for Roy Haynes.
Wow.
And got that deal with Origin Records. And
that's awesome.
And it's just always cool to see the surprise on people's face when they hear music from Kansas City.
Do they then follow that up with some sort of perspective they have on what do they identify with Kansas City, or is it just kind of like that's where it ends as a conversation,
Yeah, it's like, oh wow, Kansas City. I haven't heard much about that recently. They know about the history.
Yeah.
Like it's got a great musical history from the 30s, especially 30s and 40s. But